In this video, one of the most accurate methods to them all, the peanut method. Hello everyone, and welcome to chapter 12 of the top 20 ways to draw the figure, explaining one of my top 5 favorite methods I use to draw the figure. In this video, I'm gonna show you a method that is easy to do with a little practice and an experience in anatomy that have a very rewarding outcome. If you manage to master it, it will lead you to a very accurate and detailed figure drawing. I will explain this technique in the following section, step by step, and then do a lot of examples to make it easier to follow. Remember that the end goal of all 20 methods is to draw a base for your figure drawing to be applied on top. It's a simplified shape to build on and add the details on it later on. So let's see what this method is all about. But before I do that, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. On to the video. Now before I start with the method, I just want to talk about where and how I learned about this method. I was a student for someone that you may be familiar with. He is one of the top artists out there who have been teaching art for over 24 years. And he is still teaching drawing online on his website and on YouTube, Mr. Matthew Archambault. I was one of his very early students back in 2008. The very first year he started drawing tutorialonline.com. I was his student from 2008 to early 2010, and for 3 years I learned so much from him, including this peanut method to draw the figure. This method needs a lot of practice at first, but once you get the hang of it, it does pay off. Mr. Matt explained it perfectly in a series of videos he called the 60-minute figure drawing. He talked about this at his website and YouTube channel, and I encourage you all to go and subscribe to his YouTube channel and his website if you want to know more about this method and much more about art in general. He have hundreds if not thousands of videos explaining every aspect of drawing and art, and you won't regret it. Now since I learned this method, it's still one of the top 5 methods I used all the time. The reason is this method is very useful to draw complicated or in perspective or foreshortened angles of a figure. It simplified the torso in one shape that can twist, bend, or squeeze in 360 degrees. I will get to the pros and cons later, but this is too long of an intro already, so let's just dive in and explain the method step by step. We'll first start with the anatomy landmark. As you can see here, we have the peanut shape from the front and the back. The peanut shape covers the torso and the pelvis area and everything in between in one big shape. Think of it as two spheres with a bit of space in between attached together in one enclosure. These two spheres are the rib cage and the pelvis. On this peanut shape, we have important landmarks we need to know before we can draw the peanut. Those landmarks are from the front, the inguinal line or the groin dip from both sides, the navel, the abdominal muscles, the costal cartilage of the rib cage, the clavicles and the dip between them, the chest muscles, and the breasts. From the back, we have the spinal line, the scapula, the sacrum or the tailbone triangle, the gluteus maximus, and the ribcage back opening. Those are not all the landmarks you will learn in anatomy, but this will be enough as a first step to create the peanut mannequin that we will use later to draw the figure on. Now let's see how we can draw the peanut shape step by step from the start to a finished figure drawing. First, we start with the peanut shape. Obviously, as I mentioned before, it's like two spheres in an elastic enclosure, with a narrow part in between them representing the hips. Keep in mind that in men, the top sphere will be bigger, while in women, the lower part will be bigger. But for now, I'm drawing the female shape first. For the female, the peanut will be a smoother edged shape. We will see later for the male, it's gonna be a bit more of a boxed edge shape, depending on the figure you're drawing. This is why this method is one of my favorite. It's cause your figure will look dynamic and loose, rather than rigid and stiff, cause the basic shape itself that you start with is very organic, with zero straight lines. Okay, now that we have the basic shape, we draw the center line of the figure, which is very important to get right. This will control how your figure stand or move. It starts from the top where the first rib bone is, represented here with a circle, and follow the chest center to the navel and finally to the groin area. Next we draw the ribcage bottom edge, which will be in perspective around the sphere, not with a straight line. And then we will draw the contour of the hips going down toward the groin lines all the way to the groin, shaping the lower part of the peanut as a V shape. Now Mr. Matt usually starts with the peanut with the V shape already from the bottom, and then he adds the bottom of the peanut as a sphere afterward, before he draws the legs. I kinda like to do it the other way, but you can choose which one you like for yourself. As I said before, you learn these methods first and then you adapt them to fit your own style later on. Next we add the opening circle for the pelvis, and then we add the navel afterward, which is in between the two spheres. Okay, now we add the clavicles with a bit of the deltoid edge from both sides of the shoulders. We add the breast and a bit of the trapezius up there for the neck. Then we draw the thighs all the way to the knees. Then we draw the upper arms. This way we have basically the whole body. We only have to add the outer parts like the head, lower arms, hands, lower legs, and the feet. This method is simply starting from the center of the body and going out in all directions. And this is it. This is the figure done accurately and easily in few minutes. Now let's try the male shape now. As I mentioned, we start with a bit more box shaped peanut with the upper sphere wider than the lower one. We add the center line and the first rib bone. We add the rib cage and the groin area. The pelvic opening and the navel next. We add the chest muscles, the clavicles, the shoulders. Then we add the thighs as well and the neck. We finish off the arms and legs, and finally we add the head, hands, feet, and then we're done. And this is basically the peanut method. Very simple steps, but very rewarding in the end. Now let's see how we can draw the peanut shape from all sides. This is the turntable for the peanut shape. So we're gonna draw it from the front, back, side, and the 3/4 view. We already draw it from the front, but let's try another pose here. This is a female figure with a torso bending from the hips. Both the ribcage and the pelvis are pointing to the right, and that's making the middle section skin wrinkle in between. The steps are the same, starting with the peanut shape. In most cases the peanut shape have one long S curve from one side, the stretched side, and a C curve from the other side, the squeezed side. We add the center line at the first rib, the ribcage edge, the V shape in the bottom, the breast, the navel, the clavicles, the thighs, the shoulders, and you are 90% done. We won't complete the whole thing now, we will do that later. What I'm trying to show you is the peanut part of the drawing, which is the most important to get right in order for the rest to follow. Now we add some line weight control and we are done. Now from the side, the peanut shape is a bit narrower, especially in the middle section, but you can easily see the two spheres and how they connect. There is no center line here, so we focus on the shape of the outer edge, like the abdominal muscles and the back curve. Once we do that, we can see the leg that would be covering the V shape and the groin area, but we draw it through anyway, to understand how the figure is standing or sitting. We add the breast and the shoulders, with the clavicles and the neck on top, and we are basically done. From the back, the most important part after drawing the main shape is the spinal curve. This will determine the pose of the figure, just like the center line from the other side. But here the line is not continuous, since it stops with the edge of the rib cage, and then from the bottom we have the contour of the gluteus maximus and the sacrum triangle. And then we add the hips line and the spacula in the back that connect to the shoulders. And the neck here follows the trapezius edge toward the skull. And that would be the peanut shape from the back. Finally, let's do the 3/4 view, which follows mostly the dominant view landmark. For example, if it's more toward the front, follow the landmarks from the front area and adjust the perspective of the side. If it's more toward the back side, you do the same thing with the landmarks of the back. So we start with the shape, adding the center line, the rib cage, the V shape from the bottom, the edge of the hip, the thighs, the clavicles, the shoulders and the neck. And this is the peanut shape from all four sides done. So where do we take it from here? If we have the shape done, how would you finish it? So we are going to take the peanut shape to the final details. Not that the shape will be done all together, but the peanut part, as in the torso, will be fully detailed. This part will rely heavily on anatomy. So if you are not there yet, you can move on to the next chapter. But it's important to know how to finish your drawing after the initial phase. The start of this will be the same as before, starting with the main shape and the initial landmarks. Once I'm done with the initial part, I can lower the opacity of the first layer and add the details layer on top. Now I'm not worried about the proportion since I got all that right in the previous stage. Now I can relax and follow the figure shape that I did before, detailing the muscles, the skin folds, and the anatomy of the figure. After I get the figure done, I can go over with the new layer and add line weight to the folds, add the shadowed area, the front parts, the ambient occlusion and all that. I can add form lines if I want to some parts. I can also add some shading to the dark parts or highlights to the light ones. Remember, you only have to do this if your final product is the figure itself. If you want to add clothes, you don't have to go into so much details because most of it will be hidden underneath the armors or the costume or the clothes itself. So keep that in mind. So now we did the details, let's see how we finish our figure all the way to the hands, feet and head. Let's start with the female shape this time. The figure is tilting back a little bit, stretching the peanut shape from one side into a long S curve and a C curve from the squeezed side. We add the center line, the rib cage and the V shape on the bottom. I continue to the legs right away. As you can see, I'm starting to vary the way I draw this method to show you all the ways you can do it by yourself. Once you learn the basic, it's up to you to vary the way you apply it. So now we can add the chest, the head and the arms. Now that the basic form is done, we can add line weight to the contour and add the final details. As for the male figure here, the figure is twisting his torso from the top toward the left and the bottom toward the right. So the peanut shape, which will be a bit box-like, gonna have to twist in the middle between the two spheres. The center line here will be crucial in aiding you to draw the figure in perspective. As you can see, the opening of the rib cage is pointing toward the left and the V shape is pointing toward the right. Take your time here. If the initial part is correct, the rest will follow. If you have a mistake here, it will follow you to the end of your drawing. Now that I'm done with the initial shape, I can add the obscuring parts like the arm. And we can add the head afterward. And finally the legs. With the legs and arms, always follow the opposite C curve method. Make sure that the outer edge of the arms and legs curve a bit higher or lower than the other side of the arms or legs to make it look more dynamic, instead of asymmetrical C's on both sides. Just a little tip to make it a bit more dynamic. Add the other arms on the other side and you are done with the initial shape. Now all is left is some line weight, form lines, and some details. So far we drew this method for a long duration paired drawing. So can we use this method to draw fast gesture drawing as well? Of course, we will see that in the next chapter. So what is the important part to focus on here, especially if you have only a minute or two to draw? So the main part of this peanut shape method, you know what? I said the word peanut way too many times in this video, and I'm actually allergic to it. I feel like I'm getting hives just saying it so much. Okay. Each one of these shapes will take about 2 minutes max. The most important part doing this is the main shape, the center line, the bend in the middle, the long S curve, and the twisted C curve. Once you nail these parts, the rest can follow correctly. The amazing thing about this method is how good it works with the foreshortened and the perspective poses. If you can draw that peanut shape in perspective, you are good to go to do any pose out there, no matter how complicated or difficult it is. Just draw it correctly at the center line and you are on the right path to a great pose. As you can see, in 20 minutes, I'm making 10 poses showing almost half the figure. Even without drawing the heads or the arms or the legs, you can almost imagine the rest of the figure and how it stands. Not only that, but with each torso I'm drawing, I can add 10 or 20 variation of an imagined pose from the torso I just drew. I can draw the arms up or down or to the side, same with the legs. So not only this is a great method to draw from reference, but it's really cool to try for figures you draw from your own imagination, which we will talk about in a later chapter. And here it is, 10 figures in 20 minutes. Very easy and very cool. Next, let's take even less than 2 minutes and see if we can draw the mannequin using the peanut shape in 1 minute. Now in this chapter we are building on what we did in the previous chapter, but we add the arms and legs as dynamic lines to complete the pose. So with 1 minute only, the most you can do is a gesture drawing. What you can focus on is drawing the peanut shape itself, the center line, the V shape, and the rib cage outline only. You don't have enough time for anything else. Once you do that, add the head, the arms, the legs with a continuous dynamic line showing the joints as circles, like we did back in the joints method in the previous video. These mannequins look similar to Andrew Loomis ones, but the difference is the torso is connected in one shape rather than two. It will help doing it this way if you are willing to build the final drawing on it. The midsection of the peanut can be very descriptive of what your final pose will be. It shows any bend, twist, or squeeze of the body does when the pose gets complicated. So even in 1 minute, every pose tells a story using the minimum details you can draw in that time. Next, I will show you why this method is great for foreshortening and drawing the figure in perspective. When you draw the basic shape of this method, it's so easy that even if you don't have much experience, you can draw it in different positions, including foreshortened or in hard angles. If you can practice doing a simple peanut shape in different positions, adding detail to it won't be as hard as starting without the base of the peanut to draw on. If you can draw a peanut in perspective, you can draw a figure in the same perspective. Let's do a figure that is receding toward the background. So the bottom half is moving toward us and the top half is going back and to the top. So the lower half is gonna look bigger and in the foreground, while the rib cage is smaller and in the background. But all that doesn't matter. What matters is the initial shape. Once I do that, everything on top is just details. As long as I follow the shape underneath it, I can't go wrong here. Once I finish the details of the torso, everything attached to it will follow along. And there you go. This would be really hard to draw without the basic shape I started with. Next, let's go even harder. This shape is the opposite of the first one. The ribcage part is moving toward us and the pelvis is receding to the background. But not only that, the body itself is twisting in the middle, so the pelvis is facing the ground and the ribcage is facing upward toward the ceiling. So the pose itself has a back view, a side view, and a front view. The back view is for the pelvis, the side is for the midsection, and the front for the ribcage. No problem, draw the peanut shape and twist it in the middle, and add the landmarks on the top. The center line for the ribcage ends at the bottom of the ribcage, and the spinal line show up in the midsection before it ends down below, at the groin area. With the main line set, you can add the chest, the glutes, and the outline of the torso. Once you do that, the rest of the limbs will follow. very hard pose done in few minutes. Finally, this one is very foreshortened from the top to the bottom. The figure is twisting backward, stretching the front side on the left in an S curve and crunching on the right side in a C curve. The minute I drew the peanut in position, I know that everything on top and bottom is receding into the background and anything in the midsection is moving toward us. Once I established my perspective, I can add the landmarks on top, including the center line, the pelvis, the V shape, the rib cage, and the midsection. And finally, attach the legs and arms and the head to the basic shape. Three very difficult poses drawn easily using this method. In the next chapter, I'm going to use this method to draw a turntable figure from imagination. If you practice this method a lot, you will understand that once you get the main shape done, you can do whatever pose you like. Once you practice that a lot, afterward you will be able to draw any pose even without a reference, as in drawing from imagination. This is one of the top 5 methods I use in general, but one of the top 3 methods I use for drawing the figure from imagination, simply due to the way it laid the basic layout to any figure pose you can imagine. Now let's start the front side again. Now even without a reference, once I do the main shape, I add the center line, the V shape, the rib cage, I already got my pose done. This could be any pose I want. I can put the arm across her body or behind her back, anything I want. The main shape is done, and I can do whatever I want from here on. Now let's do the side one, but this time more of a 3/4 shape. The thing that I like about this method more than the Andrew Loomis one is the less parts I have to play with. With Andrew Loomis method, or Frank Riley for that matter, there are so many pieces you have to glue together to get your figure. In this one you have a big piece that is about 50 to 60% of your figure done in one go. You can twist it, bend it, squeeze it, and get an unlimited number of figures out of it, without a very high percentage of failure. Next we can do the back. The most important part is the spline line, as we said, and the glutes. Once you do that, you are basically done. Now let's do a hard pose, like twisting the top part a little bit. No problem. Same idea, same execution. And all these are done in like 3 to 4 minutes each. If you take 10 or 20 minutes, you will get even better results than mine. And this concludes the method explanation part of the video. Next we will do what we did in the previous videos and do the same examples we did before. So you can compare each method to the rest and find out your best one. Or you can combine methods yourself and make your own way of drawing the figure. Now before I move on to the examples, let's see the pros and cons of this method. I know you already can tell that I really like this method, but let's see how it compares to the others. Now for the pros, it has easy steps to follow, from basic shape to detailed. It gives very accurate results at the end. It's good for foreshortening, perspective drawing, along with the drawing from imagination. It's one of the top 5 methods I use all the time. I know it's not a pro for everyone, since it might not be your one of the top 5, but from all the methods I used, this one stood out. As for the cons, it does need a lot of practice to master it. It relies heavily on anatomy. You may need the dynamic sketching and perspective knowledge to draw it in hard angles. You need a good hand-eye coordination skill to draw from a photo or live using this method. As always, this is my own opinions. It varies from artist to artist, so use all methods I talked about before and make up your own mind. Alright, now let's do the examples. Starting with this example of a male model. I'm gonna use the method here step by step like we used it before, not skipping any step. But as I move forward with the examples, you're gonna see me skipping steps to show how much it will change as you get more comfortable with it. Like we did before with the Andrew Loomis and the other methods. You won't do the same method step by step when you get more experience with it. Okay, starting with the slightly box-shaped peanut. As I mentioned before, the female peanut will be a bit smoother and more spherical than the boxy-shaped peanut for the male, due to the difference, of course, between their body shapes. Then we add the first rib, the center line, the rib cage, the V shape at the bottom, the navel, and the pelvis opening. Next, I add the chest muscles, the clavicles, and the deltoids. Then I add the thighs, all the way to the knees, moving in C curves from one side to the other. Same with the other leg. Now the bottom part is done. I can draw the arms starting with the one in front of his body. Then add the head and the other arm, and I'm about done. Almost 7 minutes in and I'm done with the basic shape. Now I can use the other 7 minutes to detail the figure and add line weight, anatomy, and fixing any small mistakes I find along the way. And here is the method example done from start to finish using all the steps. Next, let's make things even faster by doing 2 examples for the male and female. Starting with the male first. We start with a boxy peanut. Now I start from different parts of the method and then go straight to the legs using opposite C's. After I draw the head, then I do the shoulders and finally the arms. This time, in 5 minutes, I'm done with the pose, and I use the next 10 to detail the figure. Less time on the method itself means more time on the detailing part. But please do not do this. When you start this method right away, it's better to take longer time on the method itself than on the detail part. Only when you master it, you can spend less time on the method and more time on the details. Okay, that's done. Let's draw the female model. As you can see, this method also works for closed model. By drawing the peanut shape, you can tell where everything is anatomically. So if you can't work on nude models, you can use it for closed one as well, or just to draw your own designed clothes on top right away. I'm doing different steps arrangement each time, but it all ends with the same results. Just try it first as it is and change it to the way you are comfortable with later on. The first part took about 5 minutes, and now the rest will be for adding details and fixing small mistakes. Now let's try the quick gesture method to do this, but not in 1 minute. We will take 3 minutes each. I would say take about 2 minutes to draw the peanut shape with all its details and 1 minute to add the arms, legs and the head later on. This way you will have the main bulk of the pose done before you move on to the limbs. As you can see, even in 3 minutes, you can tell what the model is doing in the pose. Completely clear and accurate read out of the 3-minute gesture. And here they are, side by side, done. Now let's take a bit more time than we did before and do a male and a female figure in 20 minutes. This is a complicated pose. The model is bending hard backward with limbs going everywhere, every and each way. Don't panic, do the basic shape like before, and everything falls in its place. As you may notice this time, I didn't do it like always. I just used the quick gesture method we did in 3 minutes as a base for this figure and went straight away to the details. This is how I usually use it in my own drawings. 3-minute gesture is all I need and on to the details. But again, please don't do the same right away. I can't stress this enough. You need to practice it a lot before you can do the same. I know I practiced it for at least a year before I could be as comfortable as I am with it right here. I'm just showing you the end game of this method. Once I finish the main drawing, I can do 1 or 2 more layers of details on top, fixing mistakes, adding lightweight, and correcting the pose as I go. I can almost hide the reference at this point, since I have it all drawn down. I can use my eyes to present the figure in a beautiful way using dynamic sketching techniques. "20 minutes and it's done. Now let's move on to the female model. The pose here is bending as well, but this time from side to side instead of backward and forward. Make sure that the basic peanut shape follow the same pose and you are good to go with the rest of it. Quick gestures in 3 minutes and into the details. And they are done. They both look great. And now we go on to the 1 hour pose. With this, you can take your time and enjoy it. Even with the basic shape, I take my time to follow the reference pose to the max. Once I'm done with the gesture, I move on to the details with a very slow and patient strokes, following the lines of the reference. That's why I mentioned you need a good skill in hand-eye coordination to do this method. If you want to know more about this, about how to increase your hand-eye coordination, please watch my latest video on the blind contour method. It will boost your skill to the max the more you do it. I know I put it in the beginner tutorials, but the blind contour method is essential for anyone. Even pro artists have to do it from time to time, especially if they need a boost to their hand-eye coordination skill. Now once I have the final shape done, now I can enjoy my time shading and painting this figure for the rest of the half hour left. Now it can use more work, but the hour is up and we can finally move on to the final pose, the most complicated one. Here we have the same pose from the other videos, very chaotic one. Let's see how easy it will be done using this method. I'm gonna start with 2 peanuts this time, before doing any details. If the center shape is right for both, everything else will follow. I can measure from any point of the pose toward the center and correct my drawing accordingly. The main gesture took about 6 minutes, 3 minutes each, and now I can fill in the blanks. Once I'm done with the forms, I can add line weight and correct any mistakes. The whole thing took about 30 minutes for the two figures, and it's done. And here it is, the final sheet, the peanut method by Mr. Matthew from Drawing Tutorials Online. Very simple, very elegant method that will get you wherever you want to go. Once you master it, it will help you draw the figure from life, photos, memory, or imagination. If you want more details and info about this method, please go to drawingtutorialsonline.com or Drawing Tutorials Online YouTube channel and watch hundreds of videos of Mr. Matt on this method and other art tutorials in general. He is a great teacher and a very talented artist. I will leave his link to his website and his YouTube channel in the description down below. And don't forget to tell him that Rain Walker says hi. I hope this video managed to give you a quick overview over this method and how you can use it on your own drawing. Practice it yourself, compare it to other methods, and use it in combination with other methods or by its own. It's up to you. Now before I go, I'd like to thank my Patreons who donated to this channel. Thank you so much for your generosity. I may add later on a premium subscription to the channel, but again, it's not like I'm locking any content behind it. It will be just like Patreon, like a tip jar, if it's easier to you to do it here on YouTube than Patreon. But I will do that later. If you like to support me as for now, you can go to Patreon at patreon.com/rainwalker. Thank you so much for all your help and generosity. Now I know that the Glenn-Bilbo method was supposed to be number 12 instead of this method, but it took me about 2 months to watch all Mr. Glenn videos about the figure drawing method, and I think there's quite a lot to cover, especially that he had 3 different series that he made on figure drawing in different times in his life. So his method did change from his younger age to his older age, and it's a bit hard to capture in one video. But I will just delay it for now and get the easier method out first so I don't hold it up till the Glenn video come out, and then I will come back to his method later on. So it's not gone, it just needs more time to research and refine, and it will be out when it's done, hopefully soon. So this is it for this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want to see longer art tutorials, paintings, or visual library series. Click the subscribe button under this video to stay tuned and click the notification bell to stay up to date with new videos. If you want to see other videos in this series, click here to watch Frank Riley's method to draw the figure, or maybe you want to know how to draw the head, which I have a full series for it over here. As for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.